cannot go here because I am here. I learned that from Beckett. So, what was so beautiful about this for me is that I believe in the world there are opposing forces, and the nasty opposing forces, which are in all of us, are obviously in great plenitude. You know, just to give you a little background information and why I am like I am, my parents were one English person from the north of England, from a coal mining family, half English, half Scottish, and the other one was my dad, Irish, from Tipperary. And you know, the English and the Irish always had a ambivalent relationship with each other. You know, England's problem is Ireland's opportunity was a strong phrase. And so basically you don't really want to fight for the master. And my dad was a fighter pilot in the Second World War. And he met my mum in a dance in Sheerness. And he started singing to her on the dance floor. And my father had an unerring ability to destroy music when he sang it. He couldn't sing in tune. And it was almost like art, because it was so wrong, it was like art. And my mother was a singer. So he's singing to a singer. It was wonderfully upside down and inside out. So they said, so let's choose love and not war. And they embarked on a perilous journey over to Ireland, which was very tricky. And we came to Ireland, Dublin, and we were supported by various people, including the travellers. And it always gave me a strong sense, this background information which I'm giving you, always gave me a huge sense of transformation and a non-nationalistic view of the world. And recently I was in America with a curator who's married to an Irish guy, and she said to me, he did the genealogy test and he's 100% Irish, which is weird because Dublin is Viking, Dublin. And I said, yeah, I can tell by the jacket. And he said, you mean the material? And I said, no, it's too small. So that's what I think about nationalism and racial purity. I think it's complete bullshit, and it doesn't actually exist. And this is my worldview. You know, this colored everything that I did. And I wanted to make something that was against all the terrible things that happen, that was redemptive. And I really believe that art is a powerful force. And when the fascists come to power, the first thing they do is shoot the artists. And, you know, Adolf Hitler, for example, you know, would go berserker when he would see contemporary art. And I taught actually in the academy where he was refused. catastrophically refused. And I thought to myself, this is my opportunity to save the world. If I have a narcissistic loser applying to enter my class, I'm going to say yes, not no. Because when they said no to Adolf Hitler, who was an extremely minor talent, you know what happened. His rage was inconsolable. So I really do believe that we who are involved in art and, you know, we who look for human possibility, beauty, the creation of beauty is a counterweight to ugliness and cruelty. So for me, it's not just a question that I like to make paintings. It's a lot deeper than that. And that's why, you know, when you know, I heard about your little story, I wanted to do this. And I thought all these girls would be 6. Life's full of surprises. Anyway, so I'll tell you a little bit how I got into art school. It was very, very difficult because I grew up, you know, extremely poor. But I had a grandmother who was a moral, spiritual example to me. Her name was Ellen. She was a wonderful woman. And she had 6 daughters and a little baby boy, son. And she had to leave Clonmel. So then she had to bring the whole family to Dublin, and Dublin was not in good shape. So then she had to get to London. And she got to London, and then the whole family kind of inhabited this big rambling Victorian house. And this part of my life, I think, is the part where I became an artist. We first went to the Old Kent Road, which was wretched, unbelievably rough. Wow. My mother got into a street fight with a big Polish woman, and my mother was fighting, you know, kind of like a woman, like this, the way Gavin Friday fights. And this woman was fighting like this. And she was punching holes in my mum. So I remember I threw myself around this woman's legs, and she fell over, and then my mum won, more or less, you know. But that's what the Old Kent Road was like. But when we moved to Highbury, I only had 2 years in Highbury between the age of 5 and 7, and I was in a convent school, which I adored. I loved the nuns. They were so kind of funny and strict but funny, you know, caring. I had a great time, and I was only there for a couple of years. And my granny used to go to the pub and sing for drinks. And she would weave her way home down Highbury Hill. But the thing about her was she worked every day washing, taking in itinerant Irish workers, you know, rather sad guys who would have all these stories about Ireland. And this colored me tremendously, particularly with the spiritual underpinning of the convent school. And I'm not a church knocker. You know, I mean, I'm too disobedient to be a, you know, devotional Catholic, but I'm not a knocker of the church. You know, my experience was very positive. And we used to go to a little church that had a tin roof because St. Joan of Arc got hit by a V-bomb. So they found this little shed and gave it to us for a church. And it was smaller than this, 60% of this. And what I had loved about it was when it rained, it was like being inside a drum. And the priest would be talking, but you couldn't hear anything. And that was fantastic. So it promoted my strong sense of theater. And my mother used to go to vaudeville. She was a vaudeville singer. After the Second World War, people needed cheering up, you know, so there was vaudeville. And at the top of this house, the other room was a couple. They were Jewish, and they couldn't have children. And they were Vic and Nan, and he was a transvestite comedian. And he was the funniest person I ever knew in my life. And he would come into the room where me and my brother were, and he would say, he was tall, taller than me, with a big nose like Samuel Beckett, and blonde, and he had long gangly arms. And he'd say, "All right, kids?" And then we'd start laughing, of course, straight away. And then he'd tell us a couple of funny stories. And he had this trick down perfectly, based on the vertical. And then he would say, "Okay, kids, gotta go." And he'd pull the door and have his hand here. And as he pulled the door, he'd bang the wall. And it would be just in front of his nose. And then he'd say, "Oh," and fall on the floor, and we'd jump on him. And then he'd say, "Got you again, kids." And this is how I grew up. And this colored me, of course, you know. It made me interested in art and invention, because that trick with the vertical is very beautiful, but you have to time it perfectly like a gymnast. Otherwise you break your nose. And he had it down, you know. And then we had beautiful parties in the house and extraordinary fights, unbelievable fights. There was an incredible amount of discord. And by the time I left that house, age 7, I was an artist. And then it was just a question of getting to it. And I went to work, left school early, went to work, typesetter, one of the hardest jobs in the world, where you put letterpress. And this influenced what I do. So nothing's wasted. You know, for example, there's a little painting behind us called Sander. It has a small painting inside a painting. And that is exactly the same as type in what they call the chase. I used to work on Heidelberg presses. Heidelberg presses are, you know, the same system that were used in Heidelberg 500 years ago. And you lay out the type, and then you have a picture in metal that's nailed onto a piece of wood, and you set it in. And this, of course, is the same as the illuminated manuscript, right? You know, that we all know. Particularly Durrow is my favorite one. And this tradition, which is medieval really, was still alive when I was at work, because we would set type, and all the type were like little sculptures. They were columns with letters on the top. And if you made them big, you'd have a piece of contemporary art. And I used to have to lay this out in rows and then set in the intaglio plate. This system doesn't really exist anymore because it's been conquered by the computer. And my father, who absolutely did not want me to become an artist until I bought him a house in the south of Spain, and then he thought it was okay, you know. Well, all right then. And so I had this incredible resistance, but what I found in the factory was some beauty. When you first arrive as a boy, they say, can you get the tartan ink? So I would say, okay, because I was 15. And I would say, where do I go? And then the guy would say, go down to the machine room and talk to Harry and ask him for the tartan ink. Yeah. So when you're 15, of course, you do what you're told, more or less. So Harry would say, oh, it's just gone up to the editing room. So of course you know what's going on, right? What they call rite of passage, or rite of passage by humiliation. So I go up to the top floor, and then he says, no, he's got that wrong. Go down to this other guy on the linotype machine. He had it. So I go to the linotype machine. He says, no. Said, go down by the press. I don't know why they sent you here. So you go around all over the building, and after they think they've tortured you enough, they say, you know what? There's no such thing as tartan ink. It's printed. You print it. That's what's called printing. You print the colours separately. It's not in a jar. So this kind of activity made me aware of art or humour or invention or philosophy, really, because that's a philosophical question. It's everywhere, and I looked for it. So it wasn't just painting, you know, it was the way people are, the sense of humour of people, the kindness of people, the way that people play tricks on you, this kind of thing. It's all art, especially when it's meant to create humour. And I worked in the print factory for 2 years, and I went to break the apprenticeship. And when I broke the apprenticeship, I was informed that I was the first boy to break this apprenticeship in 200 years. And then I felt the whole weight of the British Empire bearing down on me, and I would be responsible for its downfall. And I went back out in defeat. But all the guys, all these working class guys, they all said, no, come on, we'll support you. Go in again. So I went again, broke the apprenticeship. So then I got a job as a graphic designer. So you see, even in the face of all this economic, social pressure and resistance, I was inching my way relentlessly to art school. And I went to evening classes. So I'm telling you all this because everybody has an excuse not to do something. Everything has a price. And the price is nearly always work. It all starts with the work. You have to do the work. And I worked in these factories and these offices, and I went to night school. That's what you have to do. And I gave up my leisure time. And for a teenager, to give up leisure time is you know, it's really a big sacrifice, particularly when you're that age, which I did. And I became interested in philosophy, English, history, and I was better at all these things than I was at art. And when I finally, after quite a few years of night school, took 3 exams, I got A+ in politics, A+ in history, and C+ in art. So what did I do? I thought there was more potential in art for improvement. And it's not based on talent, it's work. I think you work and you get to this little snow cap on the top of the mountain, but the mountain is made by work, as a metaphor. So I worked and gradually, over decades, made a style. What I wanted to do is I wanted to unify the intellect and the sense of love or spirituality or humanism. And I hadn't seen that done before in abstract painting. I was very influenced by the writing of Erich Fromm, who's a German philosopher. And Erich Fromm included the subject of love in the thinking. And I always thought that all these things, these incredible, terrible things that have happened in the world, happened because the intellect was not tethered to a sense of humanism and love. So I tried to make a style where they both function, which is actually the concept of Friedrich Nietzsche, where emotion and structure are raging at full force simultaneously. Although that's not quite the same as what I've tried to do, which is to meld them into a style of working where they're both included. because the paintings that I make are very structural. They have a suprematist, constructivist underpinning. I was also very influenced by Morocco. And then all the pathos of European history, all the sorrows that we have seen, is somehow, I hope, laid on top of this or integrated into it. And we were talking about this morning on the way in, and so if you want a musical equivalent, that would be Arvo Pärt, who's 10 years older than me, lives in Estonia, influenced by minimalism, but has a very deep sense of soul in the music. And we compared that with Philip Glass, and that's colder. That's American, and it's very cold. And this idea of mine caused me a fair amount of difficulty in America, where I think that what I'm talking about is not happening. Minimalism in America is very separated from feeling. You know, there's a painter or a drawer in America, Agnes Martin, who I like a lot, but she didn't do what I've done, because what I've tried to do is her work is very linear. She's like a monk, and that she makes these paintings like this that are like prayer rugs, or she's devotional. It's a devotional, repetitive art form. What I've done is something quite different, because my work has body and it has European pathos included. And what you've got with my work is the language of minimalism and the whole history of Western art somehow in a ball. Voila. That's French. Would anybody like to ask me a question?
So I was wondering if, like, how you feel in today's world the value of boredom, whether it be people using social media or anything to really avoid thinking, has affected art.
Yeah, very good question. Again, deeply philosophical. And I myself am given to laziness. You know, I can waste a day like nobody, just dreaming, you know. And my office is my iPhone. I watch YouTube a lot. And I get knocked around, you know. And I find things out, though. It's made a world where people are bombarded and anesthetized, because all these glittering images are hypnotic. And you know, we're like this. And everything's moving all the time. I think it's very interesting indeed that painting has made such an extraordinary return. And it is a reaction against what you're talking about. And painting has never, never been this powerful. So it's always a question of push back. You know, it's a fight. And I'm afraid that, you know, it's not like Walt Disney. And I used to think it was, you know, like I used to think the world was going to be like Cinderella, you know, because Cinderella had to clean the fireplace and then, you know, she met her prince and then all the world was right. But it's not like that. It's a constant fight for values. Now the world is out of control. We're going up to 8 billion people. And I can tell you, if you go to China, they don't care about what you just asked. They could not care less. It's all we tweet and we chat and, you know, they're at it all the time. And then you see them, you see people out, boys and girls out on dates, and they're on their iPhones in the restaurant. It's just nuts. And, you know, I have a son who wants to be a writer, and the only thing that I think you can do is to find something, identify something that you fight for and that you love, and then you found that's meaning. You attach yourself to something, and it's meaning, and your life has meaning. My life has meaning because I made all these paintings and I'm forcing them on the world. The world wasn't going, oh, hello, Sean, we love you, you know. No, it was going, what's that? What the hell is that? And you have to persevere. And the question really is belief. Do you believe in us or not? The outcome, I can't predict. Do I feel discouraged? Sometimes. Do I want everybody to be vegetarian? Yes. Yes, and yes again. We are in an ocean of human beings. And I think a country like Ireland in particular has a unique opportunity because it has a shape. I know it's got a line across it, but it has a shape, and that line's going to get more fuzzy you know, and as time goes by. But it does have a shape, and that means something. It's not too big. So, what's the answer? I don't know. I just told you what I know. I have no, you know, I have no conclusion.
And what about success? Is it important to you?
Success.
Success.
Are you Spanish?
Italian.
Ah, Italian. Ah. Success is very important because success gives you influence. I have influence. And I'm not under the illusion that Ireland loves me because, you know, I'm so lovely. No, Ireland loves me because I'm famous. And then they say, oh, right, he's ours then. He's ours, this one. And the more famous he is, the more he's ours. I mean, that's the way it is. So I bring something, I fought very hard for something, and I didn't weaken in my resolve. Resolve is tremendous. You know, all these people that do something They have resolve and discipline. And, you know, I went to go back to my grandmother. My grandmother, Ellen, was very humble. I adored her. And she used to have a big old Cocker Spaniel called Sally, who used to roam around the kitchen, always wanting food. And of course, I lived in a meat culture, which I do not live in anymore. She had a big carving knife, and she'd be carving the life, and then she'd whack Sally, and then just carry on carving. And, you know, it was a bit rough, my world. And I'm a bit rough. So I think success is hugely important. And of course, it's better if it's given to somebody who's going to do something positive, you know. I'm having an exhibition in your country.
Where?
In Bologna.
I'm from Bologna.
Yes, I love Bologna. It's so nice, eh? Yes. It's in June. June 21. Okay.
And what value and what emotion do you particularly value when it comes to your artwork?
Well, I think emotions are, you know, difficult to name. I mean, we have made a futile attempt to name them by giving them names like anger, resignation, defeat. But I value work, insistence, and resistance. Hope, I don't really value much. Because I don't even like hope very much. Because it's like, I hope it doesn't rain. So what? You hope it doesn't rain. The rain doesn't care whether you hope it doesn't rain. You know, I hope, you know, tomorrow's sunny, or, you know. So I don't think about hope. I think about what I can do and what I will do, and I will do it. I will do it. Like that. I like Jean-Paul Sartre's phrase, iron in the soul. You know this phrase? Sartre, right? You know Jean-Paul Sartre, of course. Iron in the soul. Resolve. And of course, I'm an extremely sentimental person. And I don't know whether this is positive or not. I just don't know. I'm sorry, my answer's not more.
No, it's good.
It's okay.
How do you feel after completing a piece of artwork?
Oh, yeah, that's really interesting. That's very interesting. I sometimes feel a bit sad. When I wrote a poem on this, when Donald Trump won the election, the very next day I made a painting called Melancholia. And it was interesting, I went out from the studio and even the sky was weeping. So, you know, some of my paintings are quite mournful, like my painting there for my dad. But it's an interesting question. It's very interesting, and I'm often quiet or sad a little bit sad because I've unpacked something and left it out there. That's all I can say. Sorry.
And what's your favorite type of medium to use?
I use oil paint. I used to use plastic paint, acrylic paint. Now, acrylic paint is very good to learn with, you know, to start out with. Because when you're younger, I think acrylic paint is better because you're dealing with ideas and you're not dealing with deep emotion, not yet. And you've got to run through all the ideas. When I was a student, I did everything and I imitated everybody. You know, I ate art history. Literally, I was eating it. And I met this guy in the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia. And he had all these tattoos on his arm, and he's sort of cool looking. And he said, I asked him about something. He said, yeah, I don't know, you know, I'm an artist, because they give jobs to artists, because it's a museum. But I don't really care about art history. And then I thought, well, one day he might be the manager of the cafe, but he won't be an artist. But anyway, acrylic is good. Later on, oil paint. When I converted to oil paint, I thought I was going to have a nervous breakdown. Oh, it was so difficult. The damn stuff was doing, you know, what it wanted. And you have to get it to do kind of what it wants. It's a bit, using oil paint is like surfing. Because you've got the wave and there's you, but you can't control the wave. So oil paint can't be entirely controlled. Acrylic can be. It's graphic. So you run through all your ideas with acrylic. And then later on, if you become a painter, you can convert.
Did you find it hard to explain your art or get support in like your art when you like first started out?
Oh God, yeah. Oh my God, yeah. It was so difficult. Yeah, it's so difficult, and that's the real pain of it, because what you've got to do then, like for me now, it's easy. Everybody listens to my rubbish, you know, they take it seriously. But when I was young, you know, it was like, well, first of all, nobody really thought it was going to be that good in the end anyway, because who knows? I was turned down by all the art schools, you know, that's famously known. I was turned down, I thought it was 11, I counted them up the other day, it was 12. Every art school in London turned me down. Every art school. And I went to Croydon, which is where John Rochelle went, by the way. And yeah, because you can't explain something that's being formed, and nor should you. Also, in England, in England, which is a pragmatic society, I would say, if you go to art school, you have to explain everything. And what you're doing is, while you're explaining it, you're killing it. You explain it until there's nothing left, and then it's really good. And a student of mine, very nice young woman I had in my class in Germany, Annabelle, It's very sweet, but quite strong. And she was talking to this sculptor woman, conceptual sculptor called Svetlana. And she said, well, what do you want to do then? What's your project? Because she had to do sculpture as part of the course. So she told her the project that she wanted to basically make a painting. And then she said, yeah, but when you finished, you just have a painting. And then Annabelle said, yeah, that's right. And in that moment, you know, you can say, oh, sorry, or, oh, yeah, do you think that's not good then? But Annabelle didn't do that. She just said, yeah, that's right. And art can never be completely explained. And that is its purpose in the world, because we are living in a world, like you said, where everything is just raped, so there's nothing left. And I mean, we are in an existential crisis because of this. And it's this insistence on the intellect over everything else, above everything else. So when you're talking about art, you have to have the ability to say, yeah, well, it's not all explainable. It's one of the last areas of freedom. Art is one of the last areas of freedom. It's one of the last zones that won't give up its soul. As crazy as it is, you know, as crazy as the art market is, as mad as artists are, it has a soul that can't be codified. And you have to understand that when you talk about art or your art, and it is very difficult. That's what all I can say is, I mean, really, it's very difficult. I had extreme difficult moments. People, you know, being aggressive towards me. I mean, even now it's still the case. But to explain something completely is to explain it away. And that we must not allow to happen. There's no doubt you'll know about the book Backstory. Won the Nobel Prize. It's about trees. And the trees, it's about how trees help each other. It's very interesting. First half is very interesting. Second half it gets a bit loopy. But the first half is really interesting. It's about the communication between trees that is not scientifically put into a database. But this guy is a tree person and lives somewhere in America down south, and wrote this book, and it won the Nobel Prize. It's a great book. It's called Backstory. And it's about how things cannot be completely explained away. All the things that are worth something in the world. Love, for example.
Do you find that in your studios across the world, does the environment or just the area of where it is affect your creative process when you're making your art?
Yes, and that's a strange thing about creativity. Feeling comfortable or good in a place. I had a studio in Barcelona that wasn't a very good studio, but I had really great times there. And I noticed that in those paintings that I made in Barcelona, there's a strong use of red and no green at all in the paintings that I made in Barcelona. And I'm just remembering this now. There's a strong sense of black and white and red and orange in all the Barcelona paintings. And it's such a rough old street, terrible access, couldn't get work in and out. And it did affect me, yeah. And also in the countryside, my favorite place is in the countryside in Germany, against the Alps, where Mary Poppins sang The Sound of Music. And I really love this place. The other thing that I love about it is that I don't own it. So it's turn the key, goodbye. And it's a bit rough. And that affects me. And I remember that when I first went there, you can look this up, there's a painting of mine called Muserach. I will send you the book from the PMA, Philadelphia Museum of Art. It's a retrospective. I'll send it to you if you give me your address. And it's got this painting in it called Muserach, which is the name of the little village. And it's kind of a hippie place, like in the middle of nowhere. It's great. And I made a painting deliberately that included green. I wanted to use the relationship with nature. Just to return to this other thing about explanation, there's a text on my work by a guy called Jürgen Habermas. I'm not that educated, actually. People think I'm more educated than I am. There's a guy called me up one day when I was going into the academy in Munich, and he said, hello, you know, whatever his name was. And then he says, I want to make a print with you with Deutsche Telekom. And they're only making 5, and 4 Germans, Rosemary, Trockel, Baselitz, and so on. And they choose you, great honor. So I said, yeah, I'm on the phone, and I'm walking in, I said, great. And then he said, so you will do it? I said, yeah, great. Then he said, Jürgen Habermas wants to write a text on you. So I said, great. I'm going in. He says, do you know who Jürgen Habermas is? I said, no, but it's great. And then he said, oh, okay. And then I looked up Jürgen Habermas, and it said, greatest living philosopher, founder of the Frankfurt School, which is where Erich Fromm comes from. And in this text, he says, you cannot completely explain an abstract painting. I should also get you that text. All right, moving right along. I think I have changed. Being a parent is of course an awesome responsibility, because you're bringing a child into a world that is being ruined. But on the other hand, I don't want to just put up the white flag, and say, okay, I'm going to live my life and I'm not going to be responsible for bringing anybody else in. So that's a weight for sure. I mean, it's not all, jolly good fun, but it has affected me. I can't really explain how, but it definitely has affected me. And what I also like about it is that he's the only one who can boss me around. Because I'm famously, difficult. And I'm regarded as a difficult artist. This goes back to a point that I was talking about before. If you don't participate, to refer to your question, if you don't participate, you're a difficult artist. See, that's the pressure. So you've got to be in and not in. Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. Like this, it's a big challenge. And, I come from the generation of Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan, and I'm like them. And everything is connected to everything else, of course. Bob Dylan was a bad husband and a good father. But I'm a very devoted father. And it has maybe softened me. I mean, what would I have if I didn't have my son? I would have my lovely career, and I would have my nice hotels, but there would be a big hole, there'd be something missing. And I lost my first son, which was terrible. It gave me huge psychological problems for decades. And that never goes away, You never get over that. So this is obviously my second chance, so I won't do it wrong. The answer is yes.